See, this spirituality, particularly spirituality with this kind of knowledge approach and the treasure of knowledge as Vedanta, I don't think it is there anywhere in the world. So it has its speciality, that putting the experimental facts in such a rational manner and having that experiential exposition of truth in this manner, like a science or even greater than a science, it is a special by itself. Otherwise, as far as religion is concerned, the things are more or less common to most of the religions. That is, religious concepts, as we say Hinduism. Actually, Hinduism, there is no religion like that, because mostly there are so many religions here. Some are Vaishnavite, some are Shaivite. So we did not have anything like that. We had the scriptures and we had the practices. Adhyatma Vidya is what we now call spirituality. Now, the religious concepts are always meant for the general mass, for everybody, people. And their main purpose is to keep the society on the auspicious track. Nobody, say 99.99999% also, will not be able to understand the truth of Atma or self or the ultimate truth, as we are saying. They are not interested in knowing also. But the society has to be kept bridled on the auspicious path. So religion has the great duty of doing that. For that, they have taken the help of various imaginary models and all. But when they have taken the models, they have done it in the manner that one can progress from them to the ultimate truth or spirituality, the spiritual truth. That is why in Kathopanishad, Nachiketa is asking, what happens when the body falls? The first question of Nachiketa, the third question of Nachiketa was, or third boon he asked for, is the knowledge. What happens when the body falls? Some people say there remains something, some people say nothing. I would like to know the truth by remaining under your tutelage. That means the truth is not just say that yes, something remains, or no, nothing remains. Because he says, I would like to know the truth of that by remaining under your tutelage. That means it's a knowledge which needs a pursuit to acquire it. The shloka is, Yeyam prete vichikitsa manushye astityeke nayam astiti chaike etad vidya manushishtatvayaham varanamesha varastritiyaha. That was Nachiketa's question. In the end, he is saying that although it is so, a person should go to a person who says asti and should not go to a person who says nasti. Why? Asti means it is, and nasti means it is not. Suppose whatever idea we get from Punarjanma or etc., where there is a continuity of our identity, continuity of the soul. That means the soul does not die with the body. Transmigration of the soul means that it leaves the body and goes to another body. That means the soul remains. The fact there, the fundamental point there is that the soul is not affected by the death of the body. Now that part is true. So if you say that nothing remains, then nobody will inquire what happens after the body falls. Nothing happens. So they will not inquire, is there anything transcending the body? Is there anything which has to be known beyond the body? You get my point. But if you say something simplistically, yes, the soul goes from here to there, then you will inquire that is there such a soul which goes, and how does it go, what kind of a soul it is. So the inquiry is encouraged to know what is happening. So all the religious directions will be like that. Why do they put the temple and the idol, and they appreciate temple worship, idol worship? Because otherwise people will be completely lost in the worldliness. They have created something that during your worldly thing, and you have worldly desire. So for your worldly desire also you go to a place where you have some faith in some God or some power and you pray for that. So it makes your mind relying on something superior to your own body-mind complex. That something beyond is there and you have a faith on it. If it is there, then one day the inquiry will dawn that what is that? Is there really so? If it is there, can I know it? Can I see it? Or how can it be seen? How can it be known? All these questions are encouraged by that. So they will always put the concepts in a manner that encourages the ultimate inquiry. So one has to progress from the elementary level to the higher level. And they also condemn that if you stop at the elementary level, then you are a fool. That is somebody saying that after 7th, I do not study at all. Studying up to 7 is necessary to get promoted to 8 and going further off. Studying in school is necessary to be promoted in the college. It is necessary. Without that, you cannot study in the college. But at the same time, if you say that no, that school is enough, I won't go to the college, then it is foolish. That is the idea behind everything. Now, as far as our Indian religion is concerned, the Hindu religion is concerned, it is based on, we can say, if you describe briefly, 4 pillars. It is resting on 4 pillars. What are they? One is the concept of God. The second one is the concept of karma, the karma theory, which is nothing but causality, as I have explained yesterday already. That not only the gross causality, it has several levels of subtle causality also. Then the concept of punarjanma, that is the soul, or actually it is not the soul, they mean jiva. We have translated it wrongly as the soul. It is not the atma moves from here and there. Jiva is the correct term. So, the concept of punarjanma of the atma, that is, there was a life before, there will be a life after, that kind of a concept. Another is, the last one is the heaven and hell. Now, they are all integrated, they are all interrelated. How? Because if punarjanma is not there, heaven and hell cannot stand. That is, you have to leave the earthly sojourn and go to another place. That continuity has to be there. And again from there you come back here or go to another place. So they are all integrated. And if karma means what? Wherever you are going, it is causal. That is, if you do good here, you will go to heaven. If you do wrong things here, you will go to hell. So it is actually introducing the causality in our life. All these are very important to keep the society bridled, that it is making you responsible for whatever you are doing. Suppose the question will be there, a person who is very honest, strictly honest, but he doesn't have enough money even to take food. He is suffering, but he is very honest in his life. At the same time, parallelly, he is saying his friend who was absolutely dishonest, he is flourishing with a palatial building and all kinds of comfort and all. So he questions that what is this God, what is this judgment that I am suffering from being honest, I am suffering from all these things. And my friend who is dishonest, he is flourishing. What kind of judgment is this? What this religious theory will tell him is that, oh, you don't know. You are suffering because in the past life you were doing all the wrong things. And he is flourishing because in the past life he had done something very good. But you know, if you do follow all the righteous things now, in the next life he will be born in heaven. And this man who is doing all the wrong things now, he will be taken to the hell, where he will suffer. So it is all giving a causality and making one responsible, that you cannot say that God has punished me for nothing. That I am suffering being honest and he is flourishing being dishonest. So he is making you responsible that you are suffering not because of the deed in this life, but because of something else you did. So actually it is making you responsible for the entire whatever is happening to you. And nobody can go back to the past life and say it was there or not. Nobody can go forward and see that what is going to happen. So these things rest on the non-verifiability. As just now I said that anubhava anarudha vishaya, that is non-experientialness of them. These can go because nobody can prove heaven and hell, nobody can disprove also. So that theory holds. It is giving man two-way solace. One is this kind of doubts can be resolved by that. He will get some solace that I am going goodward only to get next time in a proper way. And also in the other way, that continuity of life is said, that when the body falls, not that everything is lost. You are still there. See, nobody, suppose I tell that just now you are going to die and nothing will be there. Nobody will be really to tolerate that they want continuity. That is one thing. Moreover, is it not closer to the truth? Because the real identity, as we have already discussed from yesterday, the Atma, which is not getting touched by anything happening in the body, anything happening in the world. Although it is not an individualistic Atma that limited by the body-mind. The real Atma identity is universal. It is not limited by your body-mind complex. It cannot move, it cannot go anywhere, it doesn't change. That is the Atma. But the fact is that is immortal, that is imperishable. So the reality of our identity is that we are immortal. We are imperishable. So saying that the Atma goes from here to there, at least you are taking him close to that imperishability. That something is still there, transcending the body-mind complex. That way it is closer to the truth than to think that when the body-mind goes, nothing is there. Because while the body is there, if we understand what we are, then we become immortal. We get to know that our identity never is lost. It is always there. So in Kathopanishad also it says that it has to be known here and now, not after the body falls. Although you are there, you are beyond time, beyond change, everything. But to know this truth, you have to know now when the body is there. In this world it has to be known. Why? Because where will you know? As long as your intelligence and mind are there, you will know. When the body falls, they are not there. How will you know? So that we are immortal, the knowledge has to be acquired when you are in this life. So that way the religious models of this Punarjanma or Atma moving transmigration of the soul, as we say, they are closer to the truth than to say that nothing is there. But we should be ready to progress from this to the spiritual level of knowledge whenever our inquiry really dawns. Now, that is why you will find in the deeper scriptures, wherever, even in, forget about Srimad Bhagavatam, even in ordinary religious also, they will say that real heaven and hell are here only. Whenever your mind is impure, it is hell. Whenever the mind is pure, the pure mind itself is the heaven. And it is very true. So there is a way of saying that heaven nobody knows, nobody can disprove also. Hell nobody knows, nobody can disprove also. But the society remains bridled by that. Suppose yaga, jajna, etc. Except a few where it is putra kameshti yaga also, where the effect is in this life, other yagas are all for after the body falls. That by doing, say in Nachiketa's father was doing the yaga by which he will attain the greatest heaven after the body falls. So nobody can verify. But it was a method of keeping the people bridled. Suppose the mind is given to desires. So we are not happy with the fulfillment of whatever desires we have indulged in this life. We want to ensure it for the after the body falls also, the same desire we want to continue. So Nachiketa himself describes that heaven is where people always are happy and there is no thirst, no hunger. Because people generally suffer from hunger and thirst. So you go to a place where there is no thirst, no hunger. Now, the Upanishads want you to think a little more. If you have no thirst, no hunger, more than half of your life's enjoyments are gone. Do you understand? Is it not by eating food and drinking the drinks you are happy? So if heaven, you don't have hunger, then you will not enjoy any food. If you don't have thirst, you will not enjoy any drink at all. What kind of a heaven it is? So nobody intelligent should like to go to such a heaven. And when you fall from the heaven, then what will happen? Again you are in the same soup. And if you go to the higher heaven, then the fall also will be drastic. When you fall, the pain will be more. The higher the strata, that seventh heaven you go, the fall from the seventh heaven will be much harder than the fall from the first heaven. All these things have been discussed in our Puranas and Shastras also, to tell you that these are all to bridle the society, nothing else. When you look for the truth, you have to go beyond that. If at all there is something like transmigrating, it is in the object level. Why? Because something is encapsulated in this body. From here it goes and goes somewhere else and goes. So it is limited in space and also time. It moves in time from here to there. So is it not an object? Maybe a very subtle object, but it is in the objectude. Our Atma, in spirituality we talk about the Atma, which is all-pervading, impersonal, infinite, never moves, imperishable. Such an Atma cannot be known as an object. That is the greatest difficulty in self-realization. Because however much we try to know the Atma is different from me. That is the greatest hurdle in this pursuit. Even given to full meditation, remaining in a cave also, they think that one day in meditation I will discover the Atma. That means, as different from me, he will never discover. Because Atma is me. Only when we stop looking outside for anything else, anything second, the Atma will manifest its. Atma will show its truth. As long as we are looking for a second, does it not mean that I am limited? I am limited by the body-mind complex. I am looking for something means I am limited. How can I be full? How can I be Purna? Atma is always Purna. Purna means when you are not looking for anything at all. No second, nothing. Then only that oneness of the Atma will be revealed. The fullness of the Atma will be revealed. This is the truth. And there, the greatest trouble, they say, why do we look for second? Because the inherited bhogecha, that is, we are born with, I started yesterday, that we are born with the abhava bodha, insufficiency, is it not? That is why we look for happiness. Now that doesn't leave us. This looking for happiness is called bhogecha. That means the will to enjoy, the wish to enjoy, yearning to enjoy. That is called bhogecha, ichha for bhoga, wish to enjoy. Now that doesn't leave us. So always we think that the world will make me happy. So I have to get something from the world. Now forget about something from the world. That means I want to have something different from myself. And as long as it is there, how can I know the self? Because we have made the self small and it is looking for something else. So as long as this bhogecha is there, the tendency to enjoy is there. A person will not be able to become self-realized. Why? Because this tendency to enjoy will make his self small. That is not the real self. When he is able to get rid of the tendency to enjoy, he forgets the whole world. The revealer self reveals itself only then. Yame vaisha vrinute tena labhya tasyaisha atma vivrinute tanum swam. As we are doing we put the garland to one person out of the entire world in marriage. Like that, when you put the garland only on the Atma and nothing other than that, then the Atma reveals its own truth. That means when we don't look for anything other than me, that means what? No objectivity is there, no objective is there. I have forgotten the whole world. In Ashtavakra Samhita it says that even if Brahma is your preceptor or Shiva is your guru or guide, you will not be able to realize until you are able to forget the whole world, including your own egoistic identity. Now, when we say forget the world, you should not think that I am there and I have forgotten the world. Forgetting the world means you are the body-mind personality is a product of nature, product of world. The world, including my body-mind personality, when it is forgotten, then what remains? The revealer alone remains. Which is when it does not reveal anything at all, the revealer alone remains. Suppose the revealer is now revealing this microphone. This microphone is appearing in my consciousness, that is why I am knowing it. So the revealer has taken this form of the microphone. But our focus is not on the revealer but on what is revealed as the microphone. Now when there is nothing to reveal, no object to reveal, no thought, no concept to reveal, the revealer is left alone. That is the transcendental. That is the real present, as you were asking, that beyond time, beyond past, beyond future, the real present. That is the eternal, that is the immortal truth. So, to know that Atma is in ordinary, it cannot be conceptualized. So, we are given some props to remain on track, and when the inquiry dawns, slowly it opens, unfolds itself. That is the way of the religion. Our soul is the only concept, the Atma is the only thing which cannot, it is not a thing, of course, which cannot move, which cannot do anything, which is not limited by space, time, anything. Anything to move has to be limited in space. Anything to move from here to there means it is a limited in space. And now it is here, then it is there means it is limited in time. The Atma is something which is beyond time, beyond space, nothing. It is not in the objective field at all. It is the I. It can be only known as the amness, nothing way. There is no other way of knowing it. You cannot know the consciousness here. The consciousness can only be known as the amness in us. It has to be self-revealed. It cannot be revealed by anything else. Suppose the consciousness is revealed by something else, then that is the revealer. What has been revealed is not the consciousness. The revealer is the consciousness. Even in that no signal state, suppose you suddenly had an accident or so, or otherwise you have a bout of unconsciousness, so-called unconsciousness. We will call it the awareness, losing the awareness. When you get back your consciousness, you say that I did not know anything. For how long you will not be able to say. But you know that suddenly for some time you did not know anything. Is it not so? That you did not know anything, you are knowing. Did not know anything means what? Always I am looking for signal, world signals that either from external something I am knowing, or internal thoughts I am knowing, or some emotion, or even the shunyata, the blankness I am knowing. So, when there is no signal, we call it shunya, or we call it the unconscious state. It is not unconscious. The consciousness is revealing this no signal state also. That is when we don't have the awareness, we call. That the general awareness we have, when we are in deep sleep also, we don't have that awareness. When you get up from that, you know that I did not know anything. There was a time when you did not know anything. How much time you cannot say, because at that time no function was there. Seeing the outward clock and all, you have to analyze how long it was. But generally the sleep is not remembered so drastically. If it is a bout of unconsciousness, you will be able to relate to your experience. Those who have some unconscious stint sometimes, you think about that, you will be able to relate it. That it is sudden cut off, because when you are coming back, you are aware. In deep sleep, when you are getting back, it is not always from deep sleep you are getting up. Sometimes again dream is following up. So you lose the memory of the deep sleep. But unconscious state, before that and after that you are aware. So you can identify the unconscious state very well. That is the no signal state. This no signal state was there, you are able to know because of this consciousness. That is the Atma we are talking about. That is the consciousness. It only reveals. It doesn't move anywhere, cannot move. There is no question of movement, because anything that moves is an object. It is in the limited field. Only the Atma is unlimited, imperishable, immortal. Our Atma, the word itself means Vyapnoti iti Atma. Atma is always, it means all pervading. Now, how can all pervading thing, how can it be limited by one body? So my Atma, your Atma are not different. But if you say Jiva, when the Atma, that consciousness is manifesting with the association of the body, taking the shape of the body and manifesting as the body, then it becomes a limited concept. So we call it Jiva generally. The Atma manifest with the association of the body is called the Jiva. See, our major problem is here that one-to-one correspondence we put. They have logical problem also. That is, one soul related to one body going and taking birth, taking another body. Then the number of souls, what about the conservation law for the number of souls? If the population increases and decreases, where from the souls have arrived and where did the soul go? We have to take into consideration heaven and hell also to match the conservation of number of souls. Nobody has tried all these things, but all this will come. Because nobody analyzes that it is not necessary to go into all that. Suppose it is, I can say somewhat, if at all anything like that is there which moves from the body to body, it's only now, so far I have said is truth. Now I am saying it is a conjecture. It is supposed to be proved by science. Because if something is moving from here to there, I said it is an object. It might be subtle, but it is an object. So it is for science to discover. It is not spirituality topic. Spirituality speaks only about the Atma, not about the world. So if something is moving, however subtle the science had to advance to that level to one day find out. As I said that, see, it is light you are seeing, the sound you are hearing, the fan you are getting, movement. But has anybody seen electricity? But electricity is an inference. It must be there, otherwise these things are not there. When this manifestation is not there, you will say there is no electricity, no power today. Similarly, has anybody seen light? Have you seen light? We see only object. When the light is scattered by the object, we see the object, we don't see the light. If you see light, then when the light is coming from the sun to the earth, suppose you go on a spaceship, you have seen photographs, is it not all dark around? From the spaceship, you should see the light which is coming from the sun to the earth. You see only when it is striking an object, that object is visible. The light is not visible. The light is an inference. So if something like that is there which is moving from body to body or so, it is for science to discover, not under spirituality. Spirituality, Atma, cannot be photographed, cannot be thought of even different from me. It can only be known as the amness, nothing else. Suppose when in any water body, waves are coming and waves are dying also. One wave is there. Next moment that wave has subsided, another wave has come. can you say that all the molecules of these waves and all the forces working in this wave had been born as this wave? We cannot. But we can definitely say that in previous time, whatever waves were there, they have manifested as the newer waves. Some of the molecules from wave A has gone to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or many. Some of the molecules have gone. Some of the forces which had given rise to this wave have further given rise to the forces in the other waves. So there is no one-to-one correspondence. Like that, if you consider that our mind, there is a lot of potential energy or force is there. Suppose you have a strong desire. Now, that desire, is it not a strong force there? That has to get fructified through fulfillment of the desire. Is it not so? So, it may happen that you suddenly die out of an accident. At that point, your mind was harboring a strong desire. Now, that desire to get fructified, it has to get associated with something else where the desire will be fulfilled. You get it? It can happen. This is a conjecture. I cannot say I don't know about it. It's only a theory, a model. So, something progressing from here to there, it can happen. That whatever thing if it has a strong force, it will have its own manifestation through nature. We had a doorkeeper, doorkeeper, Dwarvan. In our hostel, when we were staying in undergraduate hostel, we had a doorkeeper there. Once, instead of him, he went to the village and his brother came. And his brother demanded 100 chapatis for lunch. And that too, thick chapatis, not like the chapatis we take. It will be looking like this. 100 chapatis, our cooks will have to make and give him. So we had a great bargain with him. We said that maximum we can accept 50. More than that, it is impossible for us to provide you. So we accepted that. And he was taking 50 chapatis like that, and as long as he was there. So we used to say that a person who is interested in taking only the quantity of the food, not even the taste, if the chapatis are little raw also, it doesn't matter, he will take that much. So if you are interested only in the quantity of the taste, not in the quantity of the food, not in anything else, then is it not better that you get reborn as an elephant? Why should you be a human being? Human beings have been given some qualities. You have been given taste, you have been given intelligence to think. There are so many faculties given. If you are only interested in devouring more and more food, get to become an elephant. Of course, with all apologies to the elephant for comparing with human beings. They are much more intelligent than us in some cases. So this can happen. So that is how our Shastras say that the willpower, the Viveka Buddhi, the discrimination between, as we have been discussing, Shreyas and Preyas, auspicious and inauspicious, this is available only to the human beings. Tell me, is it not? Intelligence is there in others also. In dolphin and others, they are very intelligent. But the willpower to change everything, to select, choose, and to understand, and also to understand who am I. All these powers are given to the human being alone. So is that not the real purpose of human life? Otherwise you can get born as an animal also. That is why in the Puranas and all it said that one who lives this kind of life, he will become an animal like this. Another who, all these descriptions are there. Another who lives this kind of a life, he will become like this. Because they are not fulfilling the purpose of human life. Human life is special for its Viveka Buddhi, its discriminatory power, its willpower, and its decision to understand and to understand who he is in reality, the ultimate truth. So if you don't apply that ability given by nature, then it is better to be born as something else where it will be more fulfilling. There is enough reason in the Puranas also, although they are given in the form of stories, imagination, but it is all enough. There is enough reason.